Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, today we're talking to my friend Sam. He is a great pastor of a great church, multi-site. They're growing like crazy. And we're talking about hiring processes. When you go to hire someone, part-time, full-time, stipend, whatever, what are the processes that we should have in place as we are hiring people? It is a great conversation. Before we jump into it, I want to remind you to check out churchboom.org. If you have not joined our Church Boom University, I encourage you to do that. It's a small, I think it's $29 a month. You get resources sent to you. You get master classes, videos that you and your team can watch. You've got exclusive webinars. There's just a ton of ongoing training. Go to churchboom.org. And I think that you will absolutely love it. You can try it out for free for 30 days. And then after that, I think it's $29 a month. But you will love it. It's an investment into your leadership. And I think you and your team, as you watch the master classes together, will enjoy it as well. But let's jump into today's conversation. I think you're going to love this one. Let's jump into it, man. How can I serve you today? And what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, just kind of tagging on to some conversations that we've had about team and hiring. Our church has expanded over the years, and we're launching new campuses, and we need new hires. And I've listened to the podcast a few times where you've kind of jumped into some of these conversations. But what I'd like to talk about is, how do you hire someone or pick a team member who's actually going to take initiative, who's able to have ownership in the organization, who's able to kind of be a self-starter and not just someone who interviews well. How do you distinguish between someone who gives you the right answer? Most people interview well. There's enough coaching out there where people know the right things to say.
Right.
And it's not until, you get into the weeds where, like, okay, is this person going to take initiative? So how do you kind of distinguish between the right answers and someone who's going to be a core team member?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The first thing I would say is, and I don't think it's anything new. I don't think I'm going to say something right now that you haven't heard before, but whenever possible, hiring within helps a lot because you already know what you're getting into to some degree. Yeah. They're not going to become, most of the time, I'm not saying all the time, but most of the time, if they're driven, if they have natural grit, if they have perseverance, if they're strategic, if they're gravitational, if they have great relational intelligence, whatever it is that is important to you, most likely it'll already have come out in the process, of getting to know them. It'll come out. I tell you, who has a great in his book, I think it is The Advantage. I think it's The Advantage. It's Patrick Lenciani has a whole section on interview type questions that bring out stuff that you really want to see. Some of the best questions I've ever seen is Patrick Lenciani's questions in interviews, where I'm like, oh man, that's a good question. He's got some questions that really corner the person and makes
How
them.
long do you take to vet somebody? How long is your hiring process? If churches are the exact opposite of what should be a lot of times. We hire quick because we have a need. We fire slow because it's personal and transitional.
Right.
How long is your process? What are you doing to vet? What are you, okay, in twofold, someone from within you've had some experience with, okay, there's that aspect
Right.
of it. And then someone from the outside, how are you navigating that?
Yeah. I think from within, I think it's a little different because there's so many things that you don't need to get to know. So the process might be a little bit different, maybe a little bit shorter because there's not a lot of dating there. You've been dating for a long time already.
Yeah.
I can just tell you, in my world, and what I've suggested is hiring slow. Very slow. I think when desperation rises, standards fall. And the more desperate you become, the standard is definitely going to fall. So don't let the standard fall. I personally suggest and have lived it out on many, many, many occasions, usually between 3 to 4 interviews is what I'm looking at. I am going to spend time with them. I'm going to have them spend time with the team. I'm going to have them try to put them in situations that are not just going to lunch, but going to do something fun and seeing how they are. Seeing, do they mix with us, go to Top Golf and hang out and see who are they really like? What are they really like? Do they joke? Do they not joke? Or do certain jokes offend them or not offend them?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask them questions in interview process that are pretty poignant. And I do follow a lot of Lenciani's. I think his questions are brilliant in that interview process. You and I have talked about core values. That is a huge part of it.
Yeah, that was impactful for me the other day when we were talking, and you were not talking about the organizational values, but as a leader, which seemed, it's true whether you like it to be true or not. It seems, I don't like the way that feels. I'm hiring based on me, but the reality is, when you're, driving and you're a part of leading the whole organization and you're the spearhead for it, it matters. I've always heard the hiring process of character, competency, capacity, and then chemistry, I think, is one of those undervalued kind of principles for
Yep.
it. But maybe, I'm sure listeners, maybe you've covered it on the podcast, but remind me of some of the questions or the core values for you personally as a leader on how you're hiring.
Yeah, core values are such an important part of the hiring process, and really understanding if they're the right fit. I'm so strong on it that I say, okay, think of the last 3 or 4 people that were on your team that frustrated you. Almost 95% of the time, one of those frustrations is going to lead to a core value they didn't match with. The core value, as I teach it, and the short version of it is, there are 3 kind of values: core, aspirational, and accidental values. Aspirational values are the ones that everybody talks about at church. We're going to be Bible driven. We're going to put Jesus first. We're going to live lives of generosity. Those are all aspirational values. The reason they're aspirational values is because not everybody is that in your church. That's just an aspiration. You want everybody to be that. That's an objective and a goal, but you're not there. The core, so then those are good to have because it tells, hey, church, this is who we are or who we're trying to be. The core values aren't something you put on a wall somewhere. The core values are who you are as the leader, who you are no matter what. On the aspirational values, they are declared. We declare we're going to be a church of. We declare we're going to be a church of. On the core values, they're discovered. So, Sam, if I was helping you with your core values, I'd say, okay, let's get your wife in here. Let's get a couple, 2 or 3 top team members in here. And here's what I want to ask the questions. Who is this guy no matter what? What is the things that matter to him no matter what? What's going to frustrate him about future leaders no matter what? Because you have to ask it from 3 or 4 different angles. You can't just say, what's he all about? Sometimes you get one answer, and then you say, what's going to frustrate him? Oh, let me tell you, like people get all wound up about that because it's like, oh, yeah, he'll definitely not like this. You got to ask it from 3 or 4 different angles, but ultimately we're going to arrive somewhere between 3 and 5 core values that are you. Like, a core value might be, man, we work hard. That's a core value of ours. Man, we like having fun. We love sarcasm and joking around. Okay, it sounds like not a core value, but it's who you are no matter what. You cannot not be this, whatever that is for you. Everybody has them. Everybody has the things that are like, man, this is who I am no matter what. I'm highly relational. I get ticked off when people don't work hard. I get frustrated when they don't have grit. I like being really creative. I'm really outreach. I want to grow. Like, I really want to grow. Like, who are you no matter what? What winds you up and what frustrates you?
You got a good memory from our conversation.
Well, I do what I can. So that needs to be part of that process as well. Because I'm telling you, man, if where I've gotten it wrong is when either I didn't know my core values or I ignored them out of desperation.
Yeah. I
But
think those are,
it's huge.
there's somewhat of a perception of those, and drilling down, that's been helpful for me to think about. How do you think about this initiative part, this ownership? We have a couple campuses. We have, I think sometimes we treat the church a little too much like a startup or something. And so we think from the lead pastor, no one's going to own it like the owner. But the reality is it's Jesus's church. I don't own it. We all,
I get it.
like, how do we share that in a way that, hey, man, I should value this in a way that, and ministry is, a lifestyle that God's called us to, not just a job that I have. And I think,
Yep.
how do we find those in an interview process? Obviously, are there markers for people who are going to come in, or is it that the best thing to do is know them from within, and then that creates some different hurdles? But
Yeah. Well, knowing from within, in my opinion, it's always worked out better.
Okay.
It definitely has worked out better.
We've made that recently and made some changes in hiring from within and kind of raising people up and stepping them into position rather than being like, well, they're not here, and not being able to see the progression that they could be. How do you keep, someone who's been a part of your church for a long time, who's going from, Joe, whatever his profession or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're moving into, I would say from a biblical standpoint, like a deacon, director, they're handling the kind of the business administration of something, into even, okay, now they're shifting into an elder-like position, a pastoral role. How do you help the congregation, like, in the words of the scriptures, a prophet's without honor in his own country? How do you keep from hiring from within being something that people don't see this person as a quote unquote pastor as well as they do as somebody from the outside?
I personally have raised up people within many, many times. I've not really ran into that. I've never been asked that question. It really is a great question. But I'm sort of processing in my head that I think that part of the reason that we didn't run into that is the way that we honored his transition and the way we surrounded it with a biblical principle. There is a calling on this person's life. There is a mantle that they're answering. There's a baton that they're receiving, giving them a biblical part of how Jesus called people out. Peter was a fisherman, and so he called people out from normal professions and brought them. Peter became the first pastor of the first local church, and a few years before that, he was just a fisherman. So how does he become the first pastor of the first local church and one of Jesus's top three? And to be able to explain that from a calling, mantle, baton sort of way, but then also how the people had to embrace it. And when I look back on it, I think, man, I don't think we ever really struggled with that. But I think the reason we didn't, and probably by accident, I don't think we really thought of it, is that we put a strong emphasis when we announced it and prayed over him.
I love that. I think what it does is sometimes, I'm reminded of John Piper's book, Brother, We Are Not Professionals. And, sometimes I think some of it's good. There's a tension to manage. I think we've learned from the corporate world, but some of us take a CEO-like approach, and sometimes that can be good in discipline. You're not lazy, You're growing the organization. But then you take that approach in like this, hiring or vetting or raising somebody up, and it's not just giving them a job or, hey, they're coming on part-time. It really is that, leaning into the spiritual aspect of what's actually happening. And I think maybe that's what we forget. Hey, this is a call. This is from God. The Lord is, it seemed right to us and to the Spirit. I think we need to be reminded. That's good.
Yep. And I think, give them that mantle, but also give them that feeling of that biblical example. Like Peter's a great example The guy goes from a fisherman and a fisherman was a very normal,
Sure.
occupation. He went from
all those guys
extremely,
were.
all of them. But Peter, then all of a sudden he becomes a disciple, one of the top 3, and by the way, becomes the first pastor of the first local church and an author in the Bible. So this all came from just a regular occupation. That's what God always did.
Yeah, I like that. And it keeps it more too, we're not gurus, we're guides. I always say that all the time. If you want to be a guru, good luck. Don't let them see behind the curtain.
Yep.
But if you're a guide, you're putting on your boots with them. You're strapping up. Hey, man, I might trip, stumble, and fall, but we're going to go together, kind of deal.
Yep.
And if we as pastors and lead pastors set that precedent, then it makes sense that we can bring people from within and that same. They see the nitty gritty and the normalcy. Sometimes we make ministry such a prestigious, kind of untouchable place that only certain people can get in the mud with it. But that's a great perspective. Let me kind of ask another one here about once someone's on the team and they're running. This is something that's been kind of difficult for me. Let me frame it this way. What's a better way to do accountability that doesn't kill morale or make it feel like a gotcha game? And so how do you hold people accountable without them feeling like, oh man, he's looking over my shoulder? I'm not a micromanager by any stretch, but I will, I'm just, when you're in the organization, when you're leading, you're just aware of everything. And sometimes I can overcoach on the front side. I can, I'm not good at accountability on the backside because it's just like, man, I hope they figure this out. I'm going to coach on the front end, but I don't want to be critical on the back end. But how do we hold people accountable and not feel like, gotcha? Right.
Just out of curiosity, and probably helps a little bit, is there an area you're talking about for accountability?
Main leaders, like how do you, like people who are like, when we're talking about productivity, sometimes in the church world, I think we have a lot of busy work. It's kind of funny. It kind of lead to my next question. It's like I've worked at smaller churches, I've worked at big churches, I've been leading a growing organization. I know how much administrative work needs to be done. Like there's only so much work that can be done on a computer. There's only so much work that can be in the planning room and meeting room. And then there's, being with people, pastoring people, leading leaders. Like, are you connecting? Are you in the community? Are you a part of the kind of lifeblood? How do you hold people accountable without having a list of like, well, man, you really haven't done this in a while. This isn't fruitful. This isn't growing. Because those things, even though they need to happen in some regard, tough conversations, it can just kill morale. It can just feel like, oh man. But you also have a responsibility to the church and leader who, people have a lifestyle, they have a salary, they're compensated to do this. Ministry is a place where you can get lazy and out of sorts very quickly. So how do you as a leader can be owning it, being very disciplined? How do you get the rest of the organization to do that without feeling like, man, this guy's going to have a list for me?
Yeah. Well, I totally understand. I think a lot of it has to do with the approach towards it, the attitude towards it. If you as a leader feel like, man, I don't want to create a lack of morale or beat them up or do anything like that, I think personally, the leader has to change their paradigm shift in thinking that it's not about pressure, but about progress.
Okay.
And so I think if you were an associate and I was the guy and I was going to hold you accountable to it, I think it's not about pressure, it's about progress. So for me personally, I love the 12-week year. That's how I live my life, and that's how I manage other people. How I think it should be managed is a 12-week year. I love it because it's, okay, Sam, you're the youth pastor, you're the children's pastor, whatever. What do we want to get done, man? What do we want to do? Let's dream. Just dream. And so you dream a little bit. You tell me what you want to get done in a year. Okay, dude, I'm all for it, man. That sounds great. What if we did this instead of that? I help you tweak it. Okay, we come up with these 5 things like, man, a year from now, it'd be so amazing if this was our finish line. Great. What do we got to do in the next 12 weeks to make sure we even have a chance to the end of the year? The whole bite it, elephant at a time, eat a bite at a time, whatever, how you eat an elephant. But for whatever reason, when you use the frame 12-week year, it really, for whatever reason, settles into a lot of people because I don't know what it does, but it does something to people mentally thinking, I don't have to think about the whole year. No. Just what do we need to do in the next 12 weeks to get your dreams fulfilled? What I'll also do is I'll include 4 things that are ministry, 5, something like that. Give me 1 or 2 that are personal because I care about you. How much, what is it? Retirement? You want to start putting away money for retirement? You want to start saving? You want to start, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Well, I'd like to have an investment home. I've never had one before. I have one house. I'd like to invest. Okay, cool. Let's talk about that. So now it's 4 or 5 goals for your ministry, 1 or 2 goals personal. And then all I'm going to do is meet with you, and we're going to put together the 12-week year and say, okay, let's meet every other week. Let's meet every 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it is that you feel is a good system. And we're just going to look at the 12 weeks. Did we get this done? Here's the 5 things we got to get done to have a chance by the end of the year to be here. I've never had, and I got a lot of churches that we coach that do this. I've never had anybody come back. It just feels like pressure. It's demoralizing. You're beating me up. Yeah. I don't think it's because I'm just trying to help you fulfill what has been put in your heart. Now, if you give me some goals for the church that I'm like, dude, we could do that by next week. You got to think bigger than this. I'm going to help you with that. That's for sure. But we're going to arrive to something we both agree upon, something you're very excited about, something that you feel like, man, this is progress for me in the ministry, but also personally. And then I'm just going to help you fulfill it. I'm just going to coach you towards it. And I'm just going to check in with you to make sure you're staying on track. If you're not on track, I'm going to ask you why we're not on track and how can I help you get on track. I think it really is more about, I think it's important that it's more about progress than it is about pressure. I think you have to be upfront and honest and say, hey, now every now and again, there might be a come to Jesus moment in these meetings, but it's going to happen. You can't avoid those. Sure. But most overall, I'm just trying to help move you along and be a tour guide to your entire situation here.
I like that, the 12-week year. I don't think I've ever heard that. It allows it to be, the scripture says the word's a lamp unto my feet, a light unto my path. You can see off in the distance, but I'm only dealing with a few steps at a time.
That's right. That's right.
And what are some things that, as a leader for yourself, or maybe you can kind of coach me on a system or habit that you've put in place in your leadership that makes a system or habit that makes leadership easier and not just busier? Like, how do I get more efficient? Is there a system, a habit? Sometimes I think we can add things that make us busy, but not better.
Yeah. So I think it's important, if you're going to talk about the difference between busy and and productive, and I think it's really important as a growing leader, and you and I have talked about this before, I believe, but it's so important that as a growing leader that you understand and identify what is absolutely mission critical for you. That's where 70% of your time should be spent. There can't be 20 things that are mission critical. There can only be 3. I say no more than 4. That's my personal opinion, but people could go as high as 5, I guess. But what are the things that you need to be spending time in? Because the one thing I always say is the urgent is rarely important and the important is rarely urgent. We spend a lot of time on the urgent, and it's rarely that important. Then if you think about the important, it's rarely urgent. What you need to really be doing isn't urgent. It's not like, oh my gosh, I got to get in by the end. I got to raise up 2 amazing leaders by the end of the day. That's not reality here. You're not going to raise up 2 amazing leaders by the end of the day. It's what you do every day that makes you arrive to what is really important. So that's why I say the urgent is rarely important, and the important is rarely urgent.
I like it.
And so figure out the important, the mission critical, like these things I should be doing, and they're different. They're different for you as the organization grows. they change a little bit, they expand a little bit, they become more focused. But that's where I think a lot of guys miss it, is that they are busy but not productive. And we're not being productive in the things that matter the most. And I can say that, but if someone doesn't identify what that is, they're not going to be spending time with it. That's why when I take people through a mission critical, I just started working with a really large church, got 30 staff members and or more, maybe 40, I don't know, but a lot. And we're dealing with the top 10 of them, and they're mission critical. They're all over the map. They're like, well, this is important. Like, you don't even know what you're focused on.
Yeah.
You're just get here at the office. You're busy all day long.
Yeah.
You're crazy all day long. It's like, but what is really the most crucial mission critical things? To me, everything rises and falls on that.
What do you think what makes people get to the busyness? Like, sometimes I think in organizations like ours, it's such an interesting type of lifestyle and profession that sometimes we fill it with busyness to justify salaries or positions, or, man, I want the church to know I'm working hard. I want my lead pastor to know I'm working hard. But then we're just not being actually efficient.
Right.
Do you think it's a communication from the leaders? Is it perception? Is it like, how do I set this, mission critical, because I think sometimes that tends to be in churches. We've learned to run good organizations in some regards, events. We need to fill this program. We need an event because people are asking for it, and we got to do something, rather than, all right, how am I actually in the life of my church, in people's lives? Sometimes I think there's like this tension for pastors of leading as like a CEO like pastor or the shepherding pastor. And these are almost like a false dichotomy of, I can lead from 30,000 feet, run an organization, and then not actually be present in a community or being a part of the life of the church. So how do you, as a leader, as the main leader, how do you set that? And then how do you help the rest of the organization set their individual? How do you figure out that mission critical for each role?
Yeah, sure. So, yes, I'll get to that in a minute, but I do want to back up to what you said about being busy and I want to be validated. I do think a lot of that comes at the core of that. I just wanted to go back to that for people that are listening to this, because I think busyness gives us the false illusion of productivity.
Absolutely.
It's a false illusion. Like, hey, you're really busy, but that's like a rocking chair. Rocking chair has a lot of movement, no progress. A merry-go-round has a lot of movement, no progress. It's just going in circles. It doesn't go anywhere. And I think that happens a lot in the church. And because some of it is, hey, I want to show my worth. I want to show validation. Some of it, I think, comes from our own insecurity. We want to feel busy. It makes us feel productive. It makes us feel like we're worth something. I think for anybody that feels that, they have to really evaluate that. I'm not saying not to be busy. I'm saying be busy with the right things.
Sure.
But just to feel busy for busy's sake is usually stems from some sort of insecurity.
Yeah,
or fear.
A lot of us are type A leaders, want to check off. I'm not a list guy. But sometimes when I find people who need to check off a list in ministry, it's like, ministry is never done. Like, as soon as you think you've got, someone to a place of, in their walk with the Lord, man, crisis happens, things happen. Ministry is almost this void, and I think pastors struggle with that, of feeling value or accomplishment, because man, as soon as you finish one Sunday, that's the burnout of Easter, right? Like, we accomplished something. It's like, okay, get to work again the next week. Sunday's coming every week, friend. And so if you feel the need to be busy or check out, I found that, man, a lot of leaders drown in that.
Yeah, they do. And they drown in it. I think it comes from insecurity. I think it's feeding something unhealthy. And primary thing is, once you fix that, you have to figure out, assuming you fix that, you have to figure out, what do you need to be busy doing? I think we do need to be working hard and busy. I think it's what God's called us to do on the right things. So now that goes to the second part of your thing, like how do you discover, I think how your statement was, how do you discover mission critical for yourself? How do you discover mission critical for other people on the team? Mission critical it's ironically can almost be summed up in a fill in the blank. If Sam doesn't do blank, our future's threatened. What's the blank? That cuts right through so much so fast. If Sam doesn't do blank, our future's threatened. If your staff member, Justin, doesn't do blank, our future's threatened. What's the blank? That's where you figure it out. Because let's take a guy like you. You've got a couple sites. You say you want to keep adding sites. We want to add sites. Okay, I'm a big fan of we're not looking for the next campus pastor, we're looking for the next campus staff. So let's go to the children's pastor. If whatever the children's pastor's name is, Tony. If Tony doesn't do blank, our future's threatened. Okay, what's the blank? Running to Costco to get all the supplies for Sunday? No. Running the curriculum? No. Cleaning the classroom? No. Like there's so much. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be done. I'm just saying there's so much that's not mission critical. Now, if Tony doesn't develop high-level leaders, our future's threatened. Yeah, that's true. How are we going to add services? How are we going to add another campus? How are we going to get the next campus, not pastor, but the next campus staff? That's true. If he doesn't do that, we're in trouble. If he's not building teams, we're in trouble. If he's not creating strategy and systems to expand, we're in trouble. So those are kind of things that we look at. Now I look at you, I'd say, okay, if Sam doesn't figure out how to create greater resources, if he's not our chief fundraiser, our chief resource maker, we're in trouble. Yeah, we're in trouble. Darn right we're in trouble if he doesn't do that. But we're not in trouble if he doesn't do the funeral, doesn't lead every meeting, doesn't do this, doesn't do that. I mean, just fill in the blank with 190 things. But if he doesn't build the next campus pastor, that's a problem. If he doesn't become the chief fundraiser, that's a problem. If he doesn't serve as the chief visionary, that's a problem. It's like that's going to create the future becomes threatened. So it really is easy when you stop and think, what would threaten our future? Whatever threatens our future, that becomes mission critical.
That's good. That's good.
That's a fill in the blank.
Made transitions or someone's, not, you realize that a team member is not mission critical? Like, yeah. Evaluating. So some of that accountability can come through even this core value of mission.
Yeah, both of them have to work together. Because let's role play. You're the children's pastor, worship, whatever, and I'm the pastor, and I'm like, all right, Sam, we know I know what your mission critical is. Now we go to your 12-week year and we say, okay, remember 12-week year, it keeps repeating. At the end of 12 weeks, the next 12 weeks. At the end of 12 weeks, the next 12 weeks. By the time you get to the fourth 12 week, you're almost to the end of the year, and hopefully you've accomplished your goal.
Yeah.
If I sit with you and I go, okay, man, what do we want to get done by the end of the year? And none of them happen to do with mission critical. That's a major problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to call you out on it and go, okay, I just want to point out that none of these have to do with mission critical. Like a lot of this it's got to live. They live together. Your 12-week year, which is leading to a 12-month year, because you do it 4 times, that's got to go with your mission critical. So it's like, here's where I want to go by the end of the year, but you can see that it's very mission critical. They go together. It's not really all that complicated. It really isn't. It's just what do you want to get done?
It's stewardship, right?
Of your time, 100%.
Leadership is resource. And so if you're not stewarding the leadership, that's a resource to your organization, to your church. If, just because someone's, working hard doesn't mean they are stewarding well what they've been giving the opportunity.
Exactly right. And I will say just one more thing, like when people ask me, and it sounds like a different subject, but I'll get to the point, is when people ask me, I'm at a conference or whatever, and someone will say, so you're busy doing a lot of different stuff, and how do you find time to keep things in balance? Like that is just that's at every single time I get asked that question. How do you keep it all in balance, And then what they're wanting me to say is, the normal thing. Well, you got to have a date night with your wife, and you got to guard your day off, and you got to turn your cell phone off, like all the things everybody wants to hear and everybody repeats at every conference in the United States.
Yeah.
However, I've changed that, and I answer it this way. I do not think it's an issue of all those things. I think it's just an issue of obedience.
Yeah.
If I'm out of balance, I'm having an obedience issue. If I'm not spending time at home, if I'm not taking a day off, if I'm not, working on my this, that, and there, that's an obedience issue. Now flip it over to accountability, stewardship of people's time, stewardship of the church's resource, and how you compensate them. Isn't that just obedience?
Yeah.
Like someone says, well, it's just accountability. It's like, no. You're not getting mad because I'm holding you accountable and calling you on the carpet. The real issue is I'm just trying to be obedient. We need to be obedient to the funds and to the time. We have two major things that we have to be accountable: time and resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we spend our time? How do we spend the resources? And both of them are wrapped up in every single staff member. And this isn't about accountability and calling someone on the carpet and making them feel uncomfortable. We're just being obedient.
Yeah. And when we are, like I've found, and we're in a great season just personally as a family, and we're busy. I got 4 kids, 11, 9, 7, and 5, and two campuses. We're launching a third. I just became the chairman of the local Christian Academy elementary school. There's a lot going on, but it's when you are obedient in that way, Jesus says his yoke is easy, his burden is light. And what seems like a lot for one person becomes out of the overflow of our life. Man, we're just loving life, seeing good days, making it happen, and it becomes, an easy yoke to carry. And that, that's the prayer from other staff members. And I don't, other leaders is like, I want them to have that same type of vitality in their approach to ministry. This isn't a job. This isn't a burden. This is an opportunity and a privilege and an honor. And when you see it that way, it's not a burden that you're going to, get crushed under. It's going to be something that it's like weight in the back of a pickup truck, man. You get traction and you're off to the races.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's good. Well said. And I agree 100%. That is really what it centers around. But man, anything else today?
Rad. This has been great.
Oh, awesome. Dude, it's so awesome to have you on here. I love what God's doing in your life. I love the way that things are growing at the church, and you're doing an amazing job, man. And
I appreciate it. I've always, I think it was maybe 11 years ago, I almost became one of your campus pastors.
I remember that.
That's probably,
Look at that. God did.
It's cool. I've been at the church for this year makes 10 years as lead pastor. And
that's great.
That's
great.
I was much younger back then.
For sure. We all were, but man, it's so cool to have you on. Thanks for jumping on the podcast today. It's always awesome talking with you.
Appreciate it, Chris.
All right. Have a good day, man. All right. Hey, I hope you enjoyed our conversation with my buddy Sam and talking about hiring processes. I want to remind you to check out churchboom.org and to click University, Churchboom University. I think leaders are learners, and I think you have to have a regular pattern of learning, and that's what Churchboom University is all about. You can try it for free for 30 days, but we give you resources quarterly that come to your home or office. You've got exclusive webinars, you've got exclusive training, you got master classes you can watch digitally anytime about leadership ladders and growing generosity in your church and a ton of other subjects. I think you'll love Church Boom University, so make sure to go check that out at churchboom.org. And we will see you on the next Fly on the Wall podcast.